Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Oracle. We are going to do things a little bit differently this time around, and I am also recording without a virtual background. That is because we'll be doing an energy exercise, and I'll be showing you some pieces of paper. And as some of you Zoom aficionados know, it doesn't work to show pieces of paper when you have a virtual background. It just results in very strange disappearing acts. So I thought, let's shake it up. Let's also go with this Mercury retrograde energy that's still very much in the air and just take down that wall behind us. I will tell you that the energy image that I saw for this week was the image that I used for the empowerment energy clearing. And it's funny, actually, the image that I saw was a yellow brick wall exploding into a puff of red smoke. And the image that AI produced was a red wall going up into a puff of golden smoke, which I loved. I thought that just perfectly captures this Uranian feel, which is very much full of surprises and turning things on their heads in unexpected ways. So I'm running with it. And that's really the impetus or the inspiration for our exercise today and for what this week's Oracle is all about. There are, of course, other things that we could talk about that are going on in the sky around us. But really, this one is just trumpeting itself so loudly and clearly in my awareness that I felt like, why don't we just devote ourselves fully to it? And there's been a lot of heavy astrology in the air lately with eclipse season, and there's been a lot of thinking about it and talking about it and processing it. And I thought it might also be nice to shake things up and step out of that too, to go into something that is a little bit more hands-on. So thank you for tuning in and for graciously accepting this change of pace. And I hope that it helps us all to get a little bit more unstuck. So the exercise that I have prepared for you is one I like to think of as jumping timelines for joy. And it relies on some basic quantum principles and understandings. One of my favorite quantum principles is that this moment bears no relation to the next moment. That's really interesting. The light next to me just went out as I said this moment, and then suddenly I'm seeing a shift all around me already. So, what that means is that in every moment, we are recreating our reality. We are recreating the experience that we are having around us. And of course, we're mostly doing that with things that we already know. But that's not necessarily how it has to go, because truly, there are an infinite number of ways to get from A to B. And not just that one linear, logical way that we're used to thinking about when we think about the path forward of how we're going to achieve an experience that we desire to have. And where change happens in the quantum structure is at the 0 point. And the 0 point is when we go into this place of total possibility and we move from one thing to the next. And the reason that we don't always live ourselves in this infinite possibility and why our reality isn't constantly flickering to something totally different is that we have attachments, we have beliefs that hold us in place. And this doesn't necessarily have to be bad. It's just worth noticing where they are and where they are limiting us and giving us maybe that more conscious choice about what we want to print forward. So I realize that's bringing a lot to your attention and that this is out of the realms of usual astrology. So let me show you what that looks like in practice to give you a sense of how does that 0 point energy work? And also how are our brains conditioned, I suppose, or maybe even designed to process things in a linear and logical fashion in a way that can sometimes limit us from having those wonderful leaps into entirely new experiences. Like when I think about that Uranus energy, I always think about the tornado that picks Dorothy up in Kansas and drops her off in Oz. And those sorts of experiences are possible in our own lives, where suddenly something changes in a very measurable way. We find ourselves in one circumstance, and then the next moment, everything just feels completely different. So, this is an exercise to get a little bit more comfortable with that and maybe to remove some of the steps between where you wish to be and where you find yourself now. So, I invite you to pause the video and go get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen if you don't have one readily accessible. And once you have that, the paper and pen handy, I invite you to, on two sides of the piece of paper, so say it's on the same side, but two different sides, the left side and the right side, to be more specific. So on the left side of the paper, to write your name and circle it. And then on the right side of the paper, you're going to write down something that you wish to experience. And again, if you want to pause the video to reflect for a moment on what it is that you'd like to experience. It might be something you could imagine that you'd like to manifest. It could be a new job. It could be a new relationship. It could be a weekend at the beach. It can be something big. It can be something small. It can be anything. Maybe something, you can play with something that feels a little bit out of reach. And that might take a few steps to get there, just to drive home the point of this exercise. Just to give you a sense of what I've put down here is I've got me here, and then all the way over here, this other side, I've got my apartment in Paris. I've long dreamed about having an apartment in Paris. It would bring me so much delight and joy. It's only 2 hours away by train. It feels totally possible. And yet, it also feels to me, as I think about it, that there are many steps between me and getting that apartment. So I put it here because it's something that I would desire, something that I wish for, something that I believe would bring me joy. So it could be something that resonates on that level. So again, go ahead and pause. Reflect for a few moments about what it is that you'd like to put in that circle and write it down on that right side of your piece of paper and give it a circle. So it looks like this. Then once you've got these two things that are here, so you've got you, and then you've got what your wish is, I'm going to have some fun going through and detailing all of the steps that you think that you would need to take to get from where you are now to that wish. So to get from the Patrick that you see before you now to the Patrick who owns an apartment in Paris, what are the things that I would need to do? So really setting out those clear, logical steps, the ingredients, the things that you feel like need to come into place that you're going to need to accomplish in order for that to happen. And let me give you just a picture of what that looks like for me. And I kind of think this through. So it feels like, okay, well, if I want to get this apartment in Paris, I better have the money for it. These are all the different ways that I'm thinking about how I'm going to get that money. I better have a down payment. I better be getting a mortgage. And then once I've got that money together, of course, I got to find the apartment. So probably going to need to go to Paris. I'm going to need to get a broker. I'm going to need to understand how the French real estate market works. Probably going to need to visit some different apartments. I'm going to need to do some comparisons, maybe make some compromises on what are the things that are the most important to me. And then, of course, I'm going to need to purchase it. And that's a whole thing in and of itself. There's the offer, there's the acceptance, there's going into escrow, there's completion, there's me needing to get a lawyer. Again, I'm probably going to need to learn something about the French real estate system in order to acquire it. I don't know if there's going to be any immigration controls that are relevant here, but it's a lot that's going to go into that. So when I look at this, it looks like, okay, there's a lot of steps between me here and me with an apartment in Paris. So this is my linear logical thinking. So go crazy. Just give yourself a moment and imagine all of the steps that you're going to be going through. And they could even be joyful steps. They might be steps that you would take pleasure in. I might actually enjoy going to Paris and looking around at different apartments. I might enjoy meeting a broker. That's okay. So it doesn't have to be, these are miserable logistical details. They're just things that you imagine that you're going to need to do between now and then. So again, you can pause the video and just come back when you've got your sheet nice and filled out like this. Now, one of the fun things about working in the quantum structure is that this moment bears no relation to the next moment, that truly there is no time, that possibilities are infinite and we can jump from one place to another. Just as I talked about at the beginning of this, that you can be here and then suddenly you can be there. And that's what happens at that 0 point energy where there are no attachments, there's no beliefs, there's no emotions that are holding us in place or holding us back from that experience. So when we accept that there is something more than our experience of linear time and that things truly can shift or change in an instant, and we can have those sudden breakthrough moments where something that we have been imagining or wanting for a long time suddenly just is allowed to happen. That's really interesting. The other light next to me just went out as I said that. So when we take time and we bend it around, so we don't need this linear progression, we simply like this. So you can fold your piece of paper around. You've got you on one side, what you wish on the other, which means you don't need to go through all of those steps. You can just go straight through the 0 point from A to B. You just want to take your pen or your pencil and just make it happen. That's what it looks like when we're working in this quantum understanding of reality, where truly there is no linear time. There is nothing that's holding us back from having the experience that we wish to have. And now, to give you a sense of what this might show up like in my world, let's say that on my street, and there is a place on my street I know that is for rent, and there are also a fair number of French people who live in my neighborhood. Let's say that I get a new neighbor, and that this new neighbor is a French person, maybe someone who did some work with the French Ministry of Culture, someone who's very passionate about France, very passionate about Paris, and who has chosen to come and live out the rest of their days in London. Let's say that this person kept their apartment in Paris. And let's say that they really love when other people, especially people from English-speaking countries, are passionate about speaking French. And I speak French, and I speak French with my kids. And let's say that they love it when people, especially, are teaching about French culture and French values to their children. And that's also something that I get to explore with my children. And that they really, really want for their apartment in Paris to be used. They want for it to have life. Let's say maybe even that they raised their children or their family in this home, and that there's so much wonderful sentimentality in this place that they want nothing more than for this to be a home or a place for another family to go and to use it and to enjoy all of the wonders of being in Paris. And let's say that this person meets me, that I meet them, and that we get along like a house on fire. And that soon they invite me to take my family with them to go over to that apartment in Paris. And we have such a magical time that my new neighbor hands me the keys to the apartment and says, "Here's my apartment in Paris. I would love for you to use it. It would give me great pleasure to be there and to have you be there. And I would love for you to bring friends, to bring family over. I would love for this to be a cultural hub. I'd love for really this to just be a wonderful base of exploration for you and your English speaking network to come and get to know this fantastic city and to bring home things that you love from it." So this is entirely possible. It's not even really that far from the realm of what could happen tomorrow. It is something that could happen tomorrow. And when I look at the steps that I wrote out between me and having an apartment in Paris, so let's see. So in that situation, in that scenario, do I need to get any money? No, I do not need to get money. So look, I can cross that out. There's no need for me to have any money. Do I need to find an apartment? No, 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 no. The apartment was offered to me just as it was. So don't need to go and investigate the neighborhood. Don't need to compare options. I don't need a broker. No, purchasing. Do I have to go through a purchasing process? Well, no, I sure don't. Don't need a lawyer. Don't need to negotiate anything. Don't need to learn the French real estate system. No, no, it's just me in my apartment in Paris. It's just straight from A to B. So that's what I mean when I talk about 0 point energy and when I talk about that timeline jump. And truly, miracles happen. Things like this are allowed to materialize when we remove the conditions, when we accept the infinite possibilities that can connect us with what we wish to experience. I could come up with thousands of other ways that an apartment in Paris might come to me. This is just one of them. So you can have some fun with that. Think about all of the different ways that you can imagine that you could be seamlessly and instantaneously connected with what your wish is. And know that no matter how many you think of, there will always be more that are out there. And there's a next step you can take too, which is something I really like, because inevitably, when we're talking about something that we want, our ego can get tied up. So one of the things I like to do is also to look at what is it exactly about this wish that's important to you? What does it mean to you? How would it feel to have it? So if you have another piece of paper handy, or even just under or over what you've written as your wish, or if you take a post-it, like I did, write down some things about what is it about that vision that's just so appealing. And so for me, I posted over that and I'm like, well, this is what my heart really wants. And this is that exercise I've done in my writing this week in the post, is to look below what it is that I say that I want and to appreciate the emotional content and what is it that my soul wants. So things I wrote here in this post-it, like waking up happy, the smell of croissants, generous hosting, cultural connection, artistic expression, and continual learning. These are the things about that apartment in Paris that feel so beautiful and so resonant to me. And to know that those things are so close that they're even already here, they're already available. So I like that because it helps me to feel even closer to what this wish is, to appreciate what it is that my heart wants, and to know that my heart can always have what it wants and that I can do all of these things. I can do them from London. I can wake up happy. I can be a generous host. I can appreciate the cultural connection that already exists. I can express myself artistically and I can continue to learn. That's all possible here. I don't have to go to Paris for it. So, something else I like, because it gives you really that sense of being able to draw what experience you really want to have to you and then just surrender and see what shows up. See how that manifests, how it materializes. So I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a lot of fun to talk it through with you. And of course, I'm always here if you want to connect, if you're seeking more clarity on it, or if you want to run through that exercise together, just send me a note and I'm glad to do it. Wishing you so much love and also sending you that big break from the energy up there in the sky. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.